4 o'clock, we're ready to start. Okay, well, it's a beautiful day. We welcome everyone here to our Cottonwood Heights City Council work session on Tuesday, May 19th of 2026. And we welcome everyone that's here in person and those joining us online. And we will start with a review of the business meeting agenda. And after the welcome and pledge of allegiance, we'll have the oath of office for the swearing in of our Youth City Council, our new Youth City Council. And then we will have our City Council committee reports. Each one of us has 3 minutes. After that, we have citizen comments. And then we have reports. And first, and during this, if anyone has anything to add, please let me know. And we can talk about any of these topics. So we have the first report is our Public Works report by Matt Ship. And he's had a full day.
It's been a long day, but
Who is speaking?
How many marshmallows did you eat?
I didn't eat it unless stayed away from.
Then we have the Cottonwood Heights Police Department report. And then we have our action items. And the first one is consideration of ordinance 464 enacting code chapter 9.63 community and clean energy program. Any comments on this?
Because we're expecting a lot of public comment, I wondered if we could come to an agreement in this meeting about how that would be handled if there's more than the hour's worth, or what we might do if we see a lot of people wanting to make comment.
So they each can have 3 minutes. So that would be 20 of them can make comments, and unless we make the comment them shorter. When in the legislature, they limit it to 1 minute.
So you can drop it if you choose to. But
Well, can we look at how many cards are turned into staff? That might help you to gauge. If you have 30 cards, then maybe at your discretion, as chair, you could say, for the sake of having 30 cards, we'll limit it to a minute and a half. Yeah, it's a great
I
idea.
appreciate that. Just
Yeah, well, I also would be curious. I know that the vote was changed to be scheduled on June 2nd, and then it was changed to May 19th. And I was interested to understand why that vote was changed to today instead of June 2nd.
June 19th was, I think today was the original date. That was
And
pushed back to the second.
Do you know, can I share why I pushed it to the second?
Right?
Okay, so because we did not have an article as was planned in the newsletter, and that came out pretty late in the month, I asked to have it moved back to June 2nd, because without more notification about what the program is, as was planned, I thought more time was a good idea. We also decided in emails, not in a public meeting, not to have the flash vote survey. And so given more time, I thought that was valid.
yeah, so I'm more curious why the emphasis on May 19th instead of allowing for the mayor's discretion to go to June 2nd.
partly because we've been talking about this since January. Remember that's when we started talking about it. And because of how divisive it's been, we wanted to get the vote taken care of so that we could move on to other important things in our city. And I want to address this, the flash vote. I've actually scheduled a meeting with flash vote because I asked Jared to give me a breakdown of the member panel. And if you remember with flash vote, the first thing they promised us is that they would help us get a representative sample. And right now that's not a representative sample. And so I have a meeting with them on Thursday because it's really important that we be able to trust survey results without bias. So that's the reason that there wasn't a URC vote. And in the emails, we understood, we had the back and forthing with the council about how we didn't feel like what was being presented in the newsletter was all of the information about URC. And because it was such a late date, late for us seeing the article and not enough time to be able to address that, we chose not to have an article. So it's disappointing that it's been misrepresented to.
Well, I guess I'm a
why that was.
I'm a council member and I still don't understand, because if the public has not had a chance to understand the complexity of the URC, why would we cut back and give them even less time to have a chance to come to understand it more deeply?
I've never received more feedback on anything that this, and so I feel that that is also inaccurate. There are lots of people who have been involved in this, who are commenting on this, who are aware of it, and 2 more weeks won't change that.
So the fact that it's probably at least 5-1 that the comments are coming in favor, wouldn't that show that this is something extraordinary in our city? In my 4 years of service on the council, I've never seen the public so enlivened over anything. So for me, I would interpret that as, wow, this is something that the public deeply cares about, and we would want to spend and give it the full length of time versus to cut back to.
I
So,
think saying it says 5-1 is a misnomer based on what I'm receiving from people. And plus, there's a whole population, a whole segment of our population that knows nothing about what's going on. And we've been out asking people and talking to people, and they don't even know what we're talking about. So that would not be something that you can solidify and say it is a true statement.
well, I think I can, because the mayor and council through the website we all receive comments, as well as we can count the ones that were made in the last, let's say, 5 public meetings. And if we were to count those that publicly commented in person and those that went through the website, I did calculate it, and it was about 5-1.
Well, I'm hearing different things, plus the votes tonight.
And a lot of, I mean, I will discount the things that came in as form letters that did not identify as being from Cottonwood Heights. And that's probably 40% of what I received. And so I won't take that as resident comment on this. There's a lot of communities who have already voted, so we're not unique in voting now instead of June 2nd. And so that's why we council members wanted to push this to its original vote date, which was May 19th, and keep it there.
Okay, thank you.
I'll also add, if I can, a lot of the people that I talked to, I encouraged them to write in, and there was a good percentage. I don't know if others had the same experience who they hadn't engaged with the city government often. They didn't feel super comfortable in engaging in the process with, they called their elected officials. And so it's hard to know just by those alone. I think we each have our own experiences with the outreach that we've done, which isn't always reflected in a council-wide email.
Thank you.
Okay, then after that action item, we have consideration of ordinance 465, amending code sections 19.7, 5.50, and 19.76. 30 regarding separate utility meters. This ordinance will amend the city code to allow installation of separate utility meters on certain residences. We have consideration of ordinance 466, adopting a revised map provided by UFA. This is an important part of our meetings today, showing the hazardous areas in the city being close to fireworks. Any discussion on that in this meeting?
We've got a second item.
Is that an item? And I didn't have a chance to talk quickly about utility meters. Is that to allow for ADUs specifically, or what is that specifically addressing?
Yeah, I've got a quick presentation if it's okay, Mayor, to share that. So, let me share the screen. So yeah, this is a text amendment request. This is actually a resident initiated request that the applicant Ash Williams has been working with staff for a little while. And the request is to update to allow a second meter for both a guest house and a detached ADU, so a detached structure. Just as a little context, this is the property that the applicant owns. The existing utility meter is here where the yellow star is. And then the proposed structure he wants to build is on the opposite end of the property. You can see in this image, the meter there with the red circle. The accessory structure is around the corner, so it's pretty far away from the meter. In speaking with both Rocky Mountain Power and Enbridge, they recommended that he just have a second meter so that he doesn't have to tear up his driveway, all the landscaping. It would cost tens of thousands of dollars to do that. And you also lose some efficiencies with gas lines and things like that, with sizing and how far away they are from the meter. So in speaking with staff, this has come up before with other property owners that have detached structures that are far away from their home. So staff came up with this language to help allow a second meter in cases where it would make sense. So letter 2A there would say that the applicant would have to provide, evidence that they couldn't connect to the primary meter, that it's not reasonable. And then 2B would require that the property owner be responsible for the billings of all utilities on the site. So this is specific to the ADU, and then here for guest house. The last paragraph there is that the property owner would report an affidavit with the county, just clarifying that it's a guest house and not an ADU or not a separate dwelling residence. And that would transfer with title to any subsequent owners. So that in a nutshell is the proposal. There are a few communities in Utah that allow second meters. Salt Lake County does with their detached ADUs. Provo actually requires a second meter. And then Eagle Mountain also allows a second meter. So in my research, those are the few that have done that. I know in Farmington, they've gone as far as allowing detached ADUs to be subdivided and sold separately from the home, which I think is one extreme end of the spectrum. So I think this is a good compromise in that we can provide some flexibility where circumstances demonstrate that it would make sense, but it doesn't open the door to having anyone apply anywhere in the city for something like this.
Do we allow second utility meters for internal ADUs?
No, right now the code prohibits second meters of any kind on any property, any single family property.
Are there any cities that do that? I wouldn't.
That do what?
Oh, that allow internal,
I didn't research internal ones. It's not common because it's attached to the home, so it wouldn't be difficult to have it go off of the primary meter.
Since ADUs are one of our 3 strategies for, more housing, I appreciate that we're taking a deeper dive into this. It's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, so this in essence removes some obstacles and burdens on property owners that wish to have power and gas to detached structures.
And the planning commission approved this.
They did. They actually recommended that, that with the ADU that they originally struck 2A, just saying that we should allow them all the time, regardless of if it's far away or not possible to connect. That's an option, but I think it's probably best to narrow the gate to say, we'll allow it if it's not reasonable to connect to other ones.
Is this another conditional use permit? Or
A
it's different?
permit for an accessory dwelling unit is, a detached accessory dwelling unit. Those go to the planning commission for review and approval.
I don't want to make more work for our staff.
No, it doesn't. I
Attention to
mean,
that for us.
this would be more applicable to the building permit, with the utility plan that's submitted as part of that. Shane, did you have anything to add?
No, I don't have anything to add.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
All right, then we have 7.4 consideration of ordinance 467, granting a cable TV system franchise to Comcast of Utah 2 Incorporated. And they've been operating with our city for years.
So they have not had a franchise agreement with us for I don't know how long. And so
Like 10 years.
I think they finally got tired of paying our fees and decided they'd sign a franchise agreement, so.
So does that mean they don't pay our fees anymore? Does
They
that
pay the
mean-
franchise fee now instead.
Yeah, they bond under a general fee as opposed to paying every time they do a cut.
Okay,
They're self-bonded is what the
Most
franchise
utilities
is.
go through this franchise agreement. For some reason, they just weren't willing to sign years ago and
was that instigated by them or by us to?
By them,
By them.
we had offered the franchise to them in the meantime, in I forget, 2016 or 2018 or thereabouts. We had a competitor come in, a CenturyLink, entity that was wanting to do cable TV, so we negotiated a franchise agreement with them that's essentially identical to the one that we then offered to Comcast. And they just weren't interested until just recently. They came back to the table. We told them, gee, happy to do that, but it needs to be on the same terms as your competitor with whom we've already contracted because of concepts of competitive neutrality that we need to honor as a city. And so they agreed. And they had very minor changes to our form, and none of them were consequential.
Thank you for that explanation, Shane. And I also want to thank Jim for the slides that he had ready to show us about that ordinance. Thank you for being prepared always, all of our staff and attorney. Okay, then we have 7.5 consideration of resolution 2026-31, approving an agreement with H.W. Lochner Incorporated for design services with Bengal Boulevard pedestrian trail, which is on our discussion for this meeting. And then we have consideration of resolution 2026-32, consenting to appointments to the Cottonwood Heights Historic Committee. Then we have our consent calendar with our minutes, which have been reviewed, and I think no comments. Okay, so now we're ready for our reports, and our first one today is from Valley Emergency Communication Center. We have Aaron Downs and Amber Whittison here. We're giving them about 30 minutes.
Thank you for having us. This is actually Rosette Olivo. She's the police commander at Valley Emergency, and I'm Amber Whittison, the fire commander at Valley Emergency. So I want to present to you what we do at Valley Emergency Communication Center and just give you an overview of how it's what we do, and then also how it pertains to Cottonwood Heights. Ivan Whitaker is our executive director. He unfortunately was out of town and couldn't be here today. He would have rather been here than send us so he could see all of you and meet all of you. But I'll just give you a brief overview of what he brings to our center. So he has been there for 24 months. He has 29 years of experience, not only in public safety, emergency dispatch, but also in the field as an EMS director and as an EMT on an ambulance. He also brings experience from priority dispatch, where he worked as a director over implementations and also as a vice president at MD Ally, which is a telehealth company. So he brings a lot of experience and a lot of new insight and innovation to VEC. Our executive leadership team, we have Elise Haggerty, who is our chief of operations. We have Tyson Montoya, who is our chief of our financial officer, and Chandra Young, who is our chief of professional standards and development. Elise Haggerty comes to us with several years of experience. She started at Salt Lake City 911 dispatch, was an interim director there for some time before she came over, and has been the chief of operations for 5 years. Tyson Montoya has been with VEC for a couple of years, and he has given us a strong foundation in our finances. And we're seeing financial positions that we haven't seen in our history at VEC. So he's doing very well. Chandra Young is building a training division that we've never actually seen at VEC. She's building structure. She's building a team that has a lot of experience and can bring that to not only our new hires, but our seasoned employees at VEC. So she is working not only on our quality assurance, but our growth and development. We're putting a lot of effort and a lot of resources into developing our dispatchers that are coming in from new hires and hoping to see them in these positions that you're seeing on the board before their career is over. These are our communications commanders and managers. We have Nicole Lopez, who is our chief over emergency communications over our call taking division and our training division. Danny Harris is our administrative communications commander. She's over the operations on the floor and all of the dispatchers and call takers. Rosa and I, we just introduced ourselves, but Rosa is over all of the law enforcement. She's the liaison between the chiefs and the deputy chiefs and each agency, in addition to the police aspect of the operations. And I am the liaison between the fire chiefs and the deputy chiefs, and then the fire and EMS operations out on the floor. We have Bryce Rawlings, who is our facilities manager. He keeps our building running. He keeps all of the infrastructure up and running, and Brad Morris, who is our technical services. I'm sure many of the divisions within each agency and each city has worked very closely with him, as we are the pass-through for many of your technical infrastructures that work with the dispatch center. We take about 600,000 non-emergency calls every year. 250,000 of those are 911 calls. 250,000 are tows and administrative calls, text to 911s and alert notifications. We have an annual call volume of a little over 1 million calls, and it's climbing. We serve 22 agencies between police and fire agencies.
What do you attribute the climb to?
Population.
Population?
Yes. I'll show you in just a few minutes. Our population is growing. We're starting to see the west side is growing drastically. In addition to a large number of our population is higher in age, which requires more services for.
Baby boomers? Okay.
So we're governed by a board of trustees and finance committees. We were formed in 1988 and have grown since then. We have 147 employees at Beck, between the operations and floor for our call takers and our dispatchers, our supervisors and our managers, to the administration, the technical services, and training division. We have 147 employees. And our structure is based on our weighted votes and our per agency on those that we service. Cottonwood Heights call counts. I thought this would be an interesting statistic for you. For 2025, those are the call counts. On the left-hand side, you can see the police call counts, and on the right-hand side, you can see Unified Fire. And just as a little more information on Unified Fire, because they service so many different cities and entities, that is a combined, that is not just Cottonwood Heights by itself. On the left-hand side is fire calls only, and on the right-hand side is fire and medical combined. So this is where we talk about our growth and the population growth that we're starting to see, that's driving our call volumes and our demand. Citizens are living longer, which are putting them in a higher age bracket, which is requiring more medical and services from public safety. In addition, our mental health crisis is climbing every day, and trying to work on how we can better address those mental health crises is also contributing currently to our call volume. We have a lot of low acuity calls. The 911 was not intended for those low acuity calls where you could be seen in a Instacare or a doctor's office in a few days. Many of those calls are coming through 911. We also have a lot of technology enhancements that we haven't implemented, and we haven't begun to investigate what those could do for our system. So those are things that we're trying to do all at once, because it's become very apparent that we needed to bring ourselves into the 21st century. So these are some projected populations, so you can see what the growth is that we're looking at, and things that we're trying to prepare for. We are projected to hit 4 million by 2032. Which is going to increase our call volume. It's going to heighten the amount of staffing that we need, and the fiscal demands on each of our agencies and entities that we serve. Utah is growing at 18.4%, which is #1 ranked state. And you can see for those agencies that surround us, you can see the growth that Salt Lake County is much higher and rapidly growing over the agencies that are around us, Utah County, Weber County, and Davis County, who are our rollover agencies, and someone who would have to take our burden if we were to go down, or if our center would not be operational. These agencies are also growing, but not as rapidly as we are. So to your question about 22.8% of the adults in our jurisdiction are 65 plus. And only 15.2% are under the age of 18, which is contributing to our call volume.
That's by 2035.
By 2035, correct. Our mental health crisis is what's contributing to a large number of our constant callers, our readdressing callers. We have a suicide rate of 20.1 per 100,000 community members in our county, and we're not equipped to handle the volume that we're currently facing.
Excuse me, with relation to mental health,
Mhm.
do you work with partners within the Salt Lake Valley that you can defer people to?
So that's a great question. Currently, no. Currently, no, we are not built in our infrastructure, and our process is not built to handle those. We are operating on a process that we have in place 20 years ago. But we are actively working with the task force of Salt Lake County to divert calls that are not necessary for our public service response. So we have a lot of resources from MCOT to the VA services, the new mental health intake center for the University of Utah that's in South Salt Lake. A lot of those resources we're not tapping into. We're not utilizing those resources to make sure that if we can divert the call, because it can be handled over the phone by MCOT, by the crisis line, or it can be handled by a response from MCOT. Instead of sending our first responders, our fire and medical, and our law enforcement, we're not utilizing those resources right now, and we're actively working on a plan to start tapping into some of those resources that are available currently today.
There are an awful lot, and also having something in your system that will allow that would probably be very helpful.
Yeah.
Leaving some of that burden.
Yeah, so we don't currently have a triage process that would allow us to identify a caller in crisis or a caller that has a mental health problem. We're looking for keywords, something that would indicate, right? And it's only we're dependent on the caller making a statement that would give us that keyword to where we can go down a pathway that can divert calls to better resources and those clinical specialists who can handle those types of calls, where putting them in the hands of law enforcement. Not all agencies have embedded social workers or someone who is clinically supportive for those type of callers. So we have a big project that we're working on right now that will not only help those community members to get the right services and the resources that they need, but it will also take the pressure off of our first responders. So we have low acuity calls. 24% of our calls are low acuity. These callers can be seen in a doctor's office in 3 to 5 business days, not handled over an emergency response from 911. We have BLS level calls that we're responding full assignments to, and we're hoping to change the way we respond to those type of calls and better identify those type of calls. We also have our ALS paramedic level responses, and then our critical calls. Our critical calls are our cardiac arrests, our severe traumatic injuries, our severe car accidents, house fires, those type of things. Those are 2% of our call volume. Moving forward, some technology enhancements that we're looking for at the dispatch center is text to 911 we currently use. Next gen 911 requirements we have just implemented actually about 10 days ago, where we can now receive media. We can receive video calls from the callers. We can send them a link and they can click on that link and show us what they're seeing, whether it's a house fire, whether it's some sort of violence that they're experiencing and they can't speak to us, they can give us that pathway to be able to see what they're looking at. They can also click on that link, which will give us turn-by-turn directions to be able to locate them and not rely solely on the Annie Alley or the tower location. We can actually track them based off their phone location. We also, with that also comes language translation. Right now, we are looking at a high volume of our language calls that we're waiting upwards of 9 minutes to wait for an interpreter, and that's if we can identify what the language is. Many of our call takers are not equipped for the number of languages that we receive on 911 to identify what that language is. And so this enhancement that we implemented 10 days ago, the AI will indicate what language it is. So at the very least, we would be able to get the interpretive services on the line and we would be able to request that specific language. While we're doing that, AI can be actively interpreting what they're hearing on the phone and give us a transcription so we can begin the call, which is already saving time for us. We're implementing a lot of artificial intelligence in the 911 system from our medical protocols that we are actively revamping and implementing an AI technology that will help us better address those calls to the new service that's doing that for our language translation, our media receipts of text to 911 and video calls. We can also share those video calls and the live stream of the call with the responders. We can send a link to the responding officer. He can listen to the call as we're taking it. And that information will be attached to their investigative report. Over the next 3 years, we hope to have some solutions to our population and our call volume growth, our mental health response, any alternative response, including telehealth, and then a higher utilizer program for our constant callers and a technology strategy that will bring us into the next 5 years and prepare us for the Olympics as well. Well, I have for you any questions or?
It's incredible. I'm so glad that you came.
Thank you.
Some of us have been able to take the Citizen Police Academy and be out there. That really informs me, having been there, to see what you are all doing and handling. And I'm so glad that you're making updates and using AI and getting some more technology. That's really great.
It's great
That's
use case.
It's fascinating to think about the 15 languages and that AI is able to detect and help to prepare the officers who are going out there. That's so. Do you find in the years that you've been there that it's growing, the number of calls that come in languages other than the, let's say, the main 5 or that you would see? There's more and more.
Most of the technology that's out there can translate up to 36 languages, many of which we can't identify just by hearing it. We're very good at the Spanish, Spanish interpretation and recognizing that. But and we have many dispatchers who can interpret Spanish in our center, so they have always been our backup. But we see a lot of Farsi, we see a lot of languages that we don't typically.
Vietnamese, Korean, we see a lot of different languages that we didn't see before. And sometimes it's difficult to identify what language they're speaking because it depends on what part of the world you were from. And so this is really helpful, the AI, that it'll be able to start translating what they're saying.
Anything else from? We're really glad that you came. We really appreciate this update.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amber.
Thanks for
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, next we have time for our Youth City Council recognition of outgoing officers from Councilmember Suzanne Highland.
Thank you. And I see our advisor here, Scott Bracken. Are there any of the formers that are coming? Should we wait?
No,
Will be here?
they're all gonna be here at this session, except for the mayor who was not able to be.
Then I'll go ahead and just recognize them. And I wanted to start by recognizing the contributions of Councilmember Burrell. When I was first in office, we were looking at different committee assignments and I didn't have the time to be able to serve on the Youth City Council, and she graciously took that assignment, selflessly served. And I hope it's been a good experience for you. I've only been to a few meetings and I was missing out. I am really excited that I have the opportunity to work with them now. Just a few highlights of what the YCC has done over the past year. They spent 177 hours of service at Butlerville Days. Imagine how much we benefit from their participation and their volunteering. And then they also spend lots of time at Bark in the Park, the 9/11 Day of Service, Ferguson Trail Cleanup, the Monster Mash, and I was able to work with them at the Thanksgiving 5K as well. And they love getting in their turkey suits and going out and either passing out snacks or crowd control or whatever they're asked to do. It's pretty marvelous that they would do that. I did talk to a constituent today who was very complimentary of the youth city council for stepping up to help with the Pioneer Cemetery on Creek Road. There's by the Daughters of the Utah Pioneers. And she was lamenting, you know, that we can't forget our past and how that can fall into disrepair because it takes electricity, it takes water, it takes mowing, it takes lots of things. And she was very excited.
Is that Hazel Peterson?
No, it was Mary Ann who lives here
Oh,
close to
wonderful.
the
Yeah.
church. And so she mentioned Hazel Peterson, but she was really asking really for more from the city, as lots of people do. I wish we could do more, but we're grateful that we have the youth city council who can step up. And this is Orion Earhart, stayed after dark to clear the last stuff on the grass and get it up where he could to be cleared for the next day. So Memorial Day is coming up, and I don't know, are they doing that again? Okay. They also showed up for our pinwheels for child abuse awareness that we did just a few weeks ago, and they were right there. And that was fun to get all those pinwheels in the ground. You had to like stick a screwdriver and make a hole. And I brought my drill because my son showed me that. And so we just drill, and then they pick the pinwheel in and drill and put the pinwheel in, or really work hard to be able to stab the grass to be able to. So they worked. That was not passive service. That was active service. And then also ushering at the city play. Members of the youth committee, youth city council mentioned some of the things that they've gotten from this program, which is community and friendship day with the legislature, where they have time with Representative Arthur and Senator Reeby, and they were able to hear the governor speak, and then meeting with the other youth city council groups at the Capitol and also at Utah State University, which I look forward to participating in. One of the things that I have noticed just in the few meetings that I've been to is the variety of students who participate in YCC. And you can imagine that, like the population of the high school, that could span the gamut. And some of the YCC members have been very high achievers. Some have been middle of the road, and some maybe a little less academically less proficient, but they all are welcomed in a community and a supportive community where they belong. And I admire that most about YCC, that it doesn't matter where they've come from, their socioeconomic background. I know that Scott Bracken has shared with me that they even had one student that was homeless, and this was their refuge and a place to feel like they had some normalcy with their friends. And I have also noticed that some are shy and step back, and some are very exuberant and step forward. And I think that's a good learning environment where those who are shy, I was kind of one of these kids where I would stand back and watch for a while. And then when it felt okay, then I would engage. And I have observed that in the Youth City Council. So mostly what we like to do, and what we're going to do in the business session, of course, is to swear in the officers. And I had a chance to participate in the Youth City Council meeting where they elected their officers, and they did that by ranked choice voting. And that was lots of fun because there was anticipation and lots of eating of snacks while we were calculating the totals. And as one would get elected, then we went to the next one, and someone would want to be in that election too. And it was all organized. It was fantastic. So let me just recognize those who have served this past year. The mayor was Mary Ann Jensen, and by charter, the mayor has to be a senior.
Junior,
A what?
junior or
A
senior.
junior or senior. So Mary Ann's graduating this year. Then they have the service officer is Orion Earhart. The education officer was Ayrton Oliveira, and the social officer was Renata Begin. And I admire too that there's these three different areas that the youth city council focuses on. Of course, they're there for service, but they also engage in education, understanding what it really is to govern. And as Councilmember Burrell said, I think that we would encourage them to participate more in the committees if they want to, and to come to some of the council meetings. And then the social part, of course, is a big hit, because who doesn't want to go to a pool party with your friends and enjoy that? The appointed positions were Mayor Pro Tem was Orion Earhart, Deputy Service Officer Olivia Strong, Deputy Education Officer Baines Enterling, Deputy Social Officer Cassie Hager, Treasurer Carmen Ho, the Recorder Harmony Hansen, and Public Relations Silas Dassel. And I do appreciate that we're trying to mimic what we also do in our own city council. When there's passing of the baton to the newly electeds, typically we do have the new electeds or the ones that are able to speak and speak about what they look forward to. We typically don't give a microphone to the past electeds, so that's what we've chosen to do here today. In the business meeting, we will swear in a new mayor, Renata again, a service officer, Orion Earhart, education officer, Ayrton Oliveira, and a social officer, Silas Dassel. So we'll look forward to that in our business meeting.
Thank you. It was really impressive that the Pinwheels of Hope, the YCC came and picked up the pinwheels, all of them, so that the family support centers just had to pick them up. So the YCC really is an amazing service organization for our city. We will go to staff reports, and the first one is from our Public Works Director, Matt Shipp, on the Bengal Highland intersection project.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, what we're presenting tonight for your, consideration. Tonight on the City Council agenda, there's an item for approval for a contract with H.W. Lochner for the design of the county portion of Bengal, which includes, it includes these two intersections of Butler Hills Drive as well as 2160 East, or it goes down at least this far. Included in that design is this intersection. Is this crosswalk. Sorry, I've got stuff in my way here. Including that is this crosswalk here at the high school to improve that crosswalk safety. Now, really quickly, before we get in the overall scheme of it, this section, I was invited last week to the high school to present the Bengal project up and down the road and other items. And Ben Nelson and myself, as well as Councilmember Highland, were there present at the Brighton High School Community Council. The Community Council, and they had a lot of good questions. They have a lot of good ideas. The reason we presented is because they came, I believe, 2 weeks ago. You heard from the students as well as some parents, as well as Mr. Hatfield, the teacher there, the civics teacher, about what's happening here. So that's why I got invited back. What we're bringing here tonight for, once again, your consideration, if you'll recall, through this project, let me back it out a little bit so we can see the whole thing. Through this entire project, there are a handful of things that are occurring. There's 2 federal aid projects, meaning we've already received funding for it. That funding came up 2022, somewhere in that time frame, 23, where it was available to move forward. And prior to that, we did, as a city, we did the environmental assessment as well as the 30% design for the federal aid projects. Those are up and down this road. Not going to try to dig too deep into it, but it's for the whole intersection project as well as the trail portion of the federal aid project. So there are 2 things happening here. One, the county piece, which you're considering tonight for an agreement. And that is approximately, we received from the county many years ago, $1.1 million for this. And that included a lot of the trail as well as much as we can get for traffic calming and pedestrian safety through this corridor. And in that process, we've had that money. Now, like, it came up this year that it was due to be used or lost, if you will, or taken and having to reassign or however they would do that. We got an extension, staff requested and got an extension till December 2028 to complete the county portion of the project. So where we are now is, like I said, you're gonna be reviewing that and making a decision on whether you want to move forward on that agreement. Is the rest of the project is ready to move forward under the federal aid agreement? Meaning we have budgeted the funds in our capital projects to pay our portion, which is about 6.77% of the overall. And I wish I could nail down the total number, but our portion was somewhere around 300,000. I back math on that if we need to, but our portion was around 300,000. The state who administers the federal aid funds has contacted me on a couple of occasions in the last couple of months and wanting to know what we're doing. The Wasatch Front Regional Council, we met with them and had this discussion, and they are also curious as to what we're doing. We told them we're on hold until, you know, we can come to whether or not council wants to move forward. Now, the agreement, this project, what it involves is just a nod from the council, if you will, to move forward. Because it's already been preliminary design, the 30%, and this layout that you're looking at before you now, as I kind of like to describe it, was 2 councils ago, meaning there's been an election cycle on each one of these. So councils have kind of, members have changed. And we brought it back a couple of years ago when this council started, was to say we're ready to move forward. And that's when it kind of got stopped along the way because of some concerns. So at this point, we're bringing it back for you to discuss and ask questions. In my opinion, it's important that we do the whole as opposed to just this piece up here in this county portion, what we call the county portion. And we look at the whole, because if you'll remember, there's traffic calming, there's pedestrian safety, there's bicycle safety, and there's traffic flow, are trying to incorporate into this whole thing. Without the whole, this becomes sort of a very small portion of it all. And so in a nutshell, that's where we are, Mayor. Ready to move forward if the council so desires. Here's the other thing to consider. Remember, these monies, when we applied for the federal grants, we put an escalating inflationary rate to try to match when that money would become available. And we have long since passed that. It's been a couple of years, that money that we have our estimate on both of these projects, both what we call the county portion as well as the federal portion. We've passed those deadlines, so costs have increased. So waiting much longer, obviously prices will continue to increase. And as the prices continue to increase, the project itself, or the treatments that we're talking about, get less and less unless we as a council, or you as a council, decide to budget monies we may need above and beyond what the original federal aid grant is. So that's what I'm bringing forward now.
Could you better explain the 2 county pieces of where they start, where they end?
Okay, let me, what we did, see if this picture is in here. Sorry, let me bounce through. Okay, I'm going to need to, if you'll, 2 seconds. See if this is, no, this is not what I'm looking for. Apologize. Okay, let me try to, I'll try it real quick. I don't have that exhibit up. So let me try to break it down into, when we talk about the county portions, there's a couple of things happening here. When we applied originally for the federal aid grant, we applied and we received a federal aid grant. If you'll look at this intersection right here for the Bengal Highland intersection, that's one federal aid grant. to tie that in, we also applied for a federal aid grant to go from, you see this red line here, over to roughly this red line. So that is another federal aid grant. So there's two federal aid grants going on. Through the process, we have Wasatch Front has agreed to combine these two federal aid grants into one project. So we have a lump sum for that. And then also, when we were doing this, when we looked at the county portion, based on what we received on the federal aid, this, if you'll look here where my hand is moving down here, this area here is a county piece that's in the county projects originally. And then everything east of about 2160 was looking at the county portion. So in other words, tying the trail in from City Hall down to this crosswalk was one piece of the county. This piece over here was tying it in from the end of the federal aid to the sidewalk further to the north, northwest. So there's originally 4 things happening here. One of them, the federal aid, was combined. Now we met with the state as well as Wasatch Front recently, and they have agreed, and we've spoken with the county as well. What they have agreed to is the county would go from this location to here. The federal aid, we can take it wherever the county picks up and just carry it the rest of the way. So we've moved the county into one group, and we've moved the federal aid to the other group. So there's some parts being shuffled
Well,
here.
this one in the packet was the federal aid,
That's
and
the
then,
county.
and then the
piece.
county is on either side. You just said. that
That's the
county-
original county piece that's in the packet. This piece right here.
There's 2 county pieces.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But what we're considering tonight for the design and the packet is this piece on the east side, the county piece. And if you, what I said, we've taken the far west county piece and we've moved everything to the east. So it's the whole. And when we talk about this, the $1.1 million we have we have to stretch it as far as we can to the west based on the dollars. And then the rest of it will pick up at the federal portion. And then we have to stretch those federal dollars as far as we can further to the west. I know it's confusing, but there's a lot of parts.
Used to this 4 years ago, and it was confusing then, and I know it's still kind of mind boggling now, so it's been this Herculean.
So it's a 2-way
complicated.
pedestrian trail or bike trail.
On the north, it is a multi-use 10-foot pedestrian bicycle trail, correct?
So bikes can go 2 directions.
That is correct. And pedestrians as well, and it's separated by a retaining wall, by a Jersey barrier walls and curb and gutter. The one on the south is an existing bike lane, enhanced now when we, go through here and do work, but there is a bike lane existing on the south that will remain as part of this project as well.
So will the bike lane, remind me one more time, do the bikers go all the way to the intersection, or are they in the slip lane?
I'm sorry, council member, I can't see where you're pointing.
I think they're in the slip lane.
Are they
They can do either one
Yeah,
as a bicyclist.
wheels?
No, that is for pedestrian bicycles.
They will be completely separated with this design from the motorist turning right, which we know is one of the most dangerous
Correct.
things that. a
Unless
bicycle
they
can
intend to
be
go further,
exposed
unless they
to.
intend to keep going north. But yeah, they would be in an intersection.
Question,
Correct.
Matt, so they could stay on this, on a bike lane that's not protected, meaning there's no barrier, there is a barrier between the road.
On the
On the
north,
north side.
it's
So if they
proposed.
wanted to, they'd cross here, cross, and then,
They could, yeah,
Get on it.
or
Except
they can
this
stay
green
here.
area, there's no motorists in the green
Correct.
area.
Correct.
yeah, that area is protected.
So
Yeah.
that's pretty
Yes.
significant.
Yeah.
Just,
Um,
yeah.
So just to,
So can I
once
give
again,
the council feedback that from the SCC when they saw this?
Yeah.
Apoplectic, that we were gonna get rid of,
The pickup times and
the
stuff.
slip lane.
Yeah.
They could not imagine us getting rid of the vehicle slip lane at the intersection of Highland and Bangor. And this is what the council struggled with since I've been here.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a turning way.
yes, there is a turning lane.
There's
That
a
is correct.
dedicated turning lane.
There, here, yes, that's a dedicated turn
Will
lane.
we Get will it get, it won't get blocked on the north side by a bus lane because, or a bus stop, because you're gonna move the bus stop from the south.
The
to
bus stop's
north.
proposed right here.
There. So Suzanne, I, as you look at that, as cars back up here, they kind of pile and already take the right side. I believe, Matt, if I'm correct, this island, you're taking some of it to add this
Yeah,
dedicated
where
lane.
there's a, that,
So I
yes,
think in function, I believe, they'll still queue in their own dedicated line, it's just a different path.
They just have to stop at a red light.
yeah, to stop at a red light, and there's also, for, just as you look at this, the existing turn lane or right lane, if you starts about right here, this is underneath this picture, and it comes to this point, and then you go up that way. This new proposed adds that extra queue stacking, if you will. It also allows for the timing of the lights. We can work the lighting that during peak times, there's longer turn movements. And as well as, and you can see there's still 2 through lanes, nothing's changed there. The through lanes are there. The other thing that you will, up here at the, sorry, I'm bouncing between pictures and I apologize. Let me get back to the main so you can see the whole. So as this is, one of the big issues is the crossing light right here.
Yes.
Where students and pedestrians alike, I'm not gonna blame just students, but
Yeah.
they will continue to hit that crossing light and they will cross the road en masse and will stop traffic for a minute, 2 minutes at a time, which does in fact push the peak hour traffic, which is mornings and afternoons at school, will push that back. But it will always happen during peak times, but we can mitigate it somewhat with the type of crossing we put in, timing on the lights. There's some things we can do, and we're looking at some other options, but we just, like I said, the dollars are finite, so we have to weigh the pros and cons as well as the cost benefit of that. But one of the issues, like I said, one of those issues, and the other issue I will say is the function of parents bringing their students and pulling up and just dropping them off
And
just-
then U-turning.
right here in front of the school and then stopping traffic to do a U-turn to go back the other way. That does occur. Now, yes, by changing this, there may be some delay. And don't get me wrong, there's always, I don't know how to stop certain delay. But at the same time, we feel like we're improving the safety during those peak times. And it can be improved with the type of treatment we put, say, at this crosswalk, as well as education of parents and student teachers. Does that?
Well, the median makes it
Sorry.
bigger, and I just want to remind the council of what the biggest concern for the SCC is how much the traffic backs up because there's a steady stream of students. So they were advocating for a crossing guard who could stop
right.
the pedestrians for a certain period and let the traffic go through. And they felt like that would alleviate the impatience. And so what they're really asking for their safety is that we somehow time that packet of students going across the
I
street.
think you have to. So for me, when I'm looking at this project, there were 3 things that I wanted, 3 boxes I wanted to check. One was those that are traveling, a lot of students from District 1 west of Highland Drive do walk or bike to Brighton High School. And there are some parents that will not. Mostly it was, I was kind of making fun of one person that they're driving their kid to school. And then they told me the real reason is they do not feel comfortable having their kid cross that slip lane where cars are coming. And I completely agree with that. So 1, that it's safe for them to go to school. 2, that there was a line there that those cars don't end up having just a completely worse experience to drive to school for further kids. And then we controlling some of the student crossing traffic by the high school. What I'm hearing, I believe, it sounds like we're going to be able to definitely check 2 of those boxes. The third that sounds like Matt's putting some more work in is that student crossing box. So for me, though, those were the 3 boxes, which makes me supportive and comfortable with the project.
Well, I did not understand, I don't think the parents understood that there would still be a dedicated right-hand turn lane. Will there be a green arrow so that you, when traffic is turning
Yeah,
left,
it
will
would.
there be a green arrow so that you actually keep that traffic moving?
Yes. That's-
And then how is it, can you go back to the intersection and explain to me then how the pedestrians are safer crossing from Park Ridge over to Bengal?
I think what it really comes down to is that slip lane. That's really the only difference. The intersection of crossing across Highland Drive is still the same.
Go back to the design one, Matt,
Oh, the
please.
design.
But it's that slip lane that is dedicated to people and not cars that I think makes the
Well,
significant.
These are the principles of daylighting. You know, in the last 2 years that I've attended the WFRC Active Transportation Tour, we have visited places that understand daylighting of intersections, and that's what Matt Ship has done. He has implemented the things that make the motorists very aware of the pedestrians and the bicyclists. So the elements in this of separation and space and the motorist making a hard right turn that is far safer. So the principles in this intersection do align with the modern techniques of daylighting intersections for safety of all users.
Explain a little bit more to me, Councilmember Burrell, because you have always said to me and helped me understand that it is the cars turning right that are the most
Yeah, that-
danger for the pedestrians and
Yeah,
the
yeah, that's,
cyclists.
that's why having them, that's why having the pedestrians and cyclists be able to be distanced. What you don't want is cars, motorists thinking, hey, I don't have to come to a stop. I'm in a ramp that's just gonna let me turn right. And that's when people, whether they're crossing in this part of the intersection or they're trying to go around to the right, become endangered by those motors. So this, well, and they'll have to be, and that's where I'm sure you know, that Matt Ship has MU's TCD and other national standards that will instruct how the signaling will go to make it as efficient as possible, but also protect those that are pedestrians and cyclists. I don't know if I answered
Still
your.
unclear about how, what Councilmember Holton just stated is that the students who are going from Park Ridge across Highland Drive,
They're coming.
they cross there, and then what do they do if they're on their bikes or they're walking?
Well, they can come here and they do it on the trail here and go right here.
They have to cross the road and then cross the.
Right now, they have to
Then
cross
there's
here, which is what they're saying.
Cross here and
Yeah,
then
they
cross
do.
that and then go over there. So they have to cross over the right turn dedicated lane.
Does that make their walk any longer than it is now to go around?
Not really.
the
It's the same distance.
What we'll probably have to do is figure out where the social trails would be and actually pave those.
Well, they would probably prefer to come through this green area
Yes.
like this, so that, yeah, I hope
But
that
that
will
can be
be
done.
considered, because
Yeah.
That makes a lot more sense to me.
This is 30% design. That will be considered in the full design. That's what
Oh.
we're trying to get to because
Okay,
I want to commend Matt because I know before I got here that he was given a directive to go and get grants.
yes,
Matt pulled this together with, you heard, 4 different grants here.
yes.
Pulled this all together, got 30% design, got that design approved by previous council, and now we're sitting here going, are we gonna do this or not? If we don't do it, we're likely gonna lose the money or the cost will go even further up. So I just wanted to commend him in putting this together because it's been a process. Again, 30% design, so there's still 70% to go.
I also want to commend Matt because if I ask to meet with him, he has me come. I can ask all the questions I want. And so I urge our council members to do that when they see these projects coming up. If you have questions, take the time to ask Matt. He's glad to answer the questions. I have 2 quick questions.
Yes, ma'am.
I know that some of our residents will ask about maintenance costs, like what will be the maintenance costs added for the trail? Is that something that we can handle in our budget? And then my other question is, for the surfaces, are they asphalt or cement for the paths?
For the path, the north one, well, it'll all be asphalt. These will be an asphalt path. The 10-foot trail path will be asphalt. This through here will probably be concrete, whichever direction we go. These paths will as well end up being asphalt. And one of the reasons there, you know, it's less money to maintain. Now it's
Softer for runners.
softer for runners. It does add a little more skid resistance. There's a few things. As far as maintenance of the trail, it would be added to our, if you will, our snow plowing. Like the sidewalks that we own, it would be added to that. And yes, there's gonna be some increased time as far as, but it would just be added. I'm not sure other than that. And then the standard maintenance, treatments on trails where we put surfacing on it or different types of coatings when those things come up. So, yeah, that's, so Mayor, I don't know if I answered your
Yeah.
question, but it's pretty.
And I've talked with people when I've been canvassing in those homes right there, that
North.
we see. Mhm.
Mhm.
And I think having this trail will give them a buffer. They have had people land in their backyards, over the years. Cars. Yes.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
In the last 6 months, I think.
I don't know about that, but in past years, I don't know, right?
Gotta get up and just
But
because
so people go fast and so
So-
having that buffer, I think sometimes people complain about trails near their homes. I think this is a case where that buffer will benefit everyone that's in that area. So.
I love that on the north side. I'm still a little unclear about. So I didn't realize 30% design doesn't define on the plan. So we still could bring.
Yeah, we could follow it this way. This is also, if you recall, there's a bike lane on the east side of Highland, however north is turned, on that side of Highland, where you come off of Highland, if you want to continue on Bengal, you don't have to go to the intersection and then turn and go, climb that hill, stop and then climb. You can actually get off on the bicycle lane. You're already climbing. There's an off ramp for a bike and follow that around. And then you get to roughly this location. And then there's an on ramp back onto what we would call
Bike lane, protected bike lane, unprotected bike.
and then it goes to a tight.
Unless you wanted to cross,
bike
and
lane.
be fully protected.
If you wanted to cross, you can go that way. If you're going north, you're a vehicle. You are following the rules of the vehicles. You're in the intersection and you're going through north, just like you would if you were on Bengal. You're following the rules of the road there. On this north side, there is shoulder enough that bicyclists can use who are wanting to go south on Highland. They would just ride the bikes as they do now into a bicyclist would do, following the rules of the road, get to the intersection, make that turn, and then they're on a bike trail again, right here, a bike lane going south on Highland. So
Your next design phase will really take into account that safety of pedestrians, double turn lane with this dedicated right.
correct.
I hope that serves.
I hope so too.
I don't know. The only
Still
thing
a very busy intersection.
I've been
Yeah,
bringing this
it's-
up for the last 4 years, and I understand that this concrete fencing may be owned by this resident. But this was really, not a good idea to have this protrude out. It makes it difficult for those that are on bicycle or a motorist wanting to go to the right, not being able to see cars as they come zooming up this hill and then come through the intersection. So I just want to note that I don't know how to overcome that, but that to me is an impediment for those who are going to school or, moving through on foot or.
I agree.
Or even a motorist wanting to turn right.
No,
I don't know.
I'll
Yeah,
second
do we
that
crash
too,
data,
yeah.
chief, on how frequently there has been, crashes in this area?
I pulled the crash data 6 months ago. I presented it. There's not as many as you think, but I can get you more updated
I
information.
mean, like over the last 5 years or so. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
It seems like. Again, that's.
It would be lovely to see some right of way considered, like purchasing some right of way from that property if possible.
It's in Chile.
It's an HOA.
This would also, this project limits, sorry, following the dollars, the project limits are actually. We don't have any to go to the west and do any property act. That would be a separate project. If we want to look at line of sight, which you're discussing, yes, that wall is there. Not sure why it's there. But you can see the problem. I mean, when it was laid out, there's the curb and gutter right here and there's the curb and gutter here, so they don't line up.
It'd be
So
interesting-
that's 30, 40 plus 50-year-old issue that's been there. Not saying it's right, but
But it-
if we want to
it
do
meets line of
something, we
sight
have to
standard
go.
Does it-
No.
No,
it
it's
does not
grandfathered
meet
into the
line of
Grandfather, right. If we want to do something, we have to,
So you
we
can't
have to
force
step
them.
up with a new project and talk about purchasing the property, moving the fence back, making those
It
adjustments.
really is the trickiest spot because they're coming up a hill,
I know.
then there's going down a hill.
Yeah.
Then you have these barriers here and you're kind of looking,
Then the lane merges.
and you're hoping,
you-
and then
I know.
the
you-
lane merges. I mean, it really is
It's a bad.
quite problematic.
You know, it'd be interesting to know if the HOA, if it was built 50 years ago and it was just because that's what you do, you build a big honking concrete and, you know, wouldn't it be something if the HOA, you know, if there was a discussion and they understood the danger that that brings, and we said, well, we'll cover the cost of just removing, I mean, if it really isn't serving a function and just
I think
re-lamp.
it's a sound wall is my gut tells me. And the interesting thing is,
1976.
I don't think that it's just the HOAs because there's a matching wall on this corner as well. So, and I do not believe, because these are not rentals, I do not believe that this is in an HOA. So they're on both sides.
Yeah.
And so I don't know the history.
Yeah.
It's something we can keep an eye out for.
Yeah.
If we don't have a solution today,
We're,
Make it more expensive tomorrow, is I think what we're
I-
all saying,
yeah,
is
I-
if
I
it
think
could be
I agree.
The
considered.
thing is that Matt has got all this funding
Yes,
together
yes, yes.
and we need to move,
Yeah.
so we don't lose it.
yes,
Yes.
agreed.
Because again, tonight is just for the county portion of the trail that you talked about at the beginning, but we wanted to make sure as we go forward that we're good to move.
if you're good to move, then I will work with the feds to get the FAA signed, state and the feds to sign it. That is an agreement between the feds and the state. We oversee, we're part of the design, but there's no other contracts, if you will, that need to be taken care of from the council. It becomes, we're ready to move forward. And if you're ready to move forward, then we will move into that process and get that going. So it is, hopefully we can get economy of scale on construction and a lot of things.
I think you have a majority of us behind you.
But no more public comment on that then? Like, could we take it back to the SCC and just at least get their buy-in and help them understand why we have a dedicated right to turn lane there and what it does?
I actually had a discussion with a
Wow.
handful of them after the meeting and showing it to them. I think, yes, it's, like I said in the meeting, it's going to cause some inconvenience and during peak times, but once again, I don't know how to get away from that. And it's a whole, I guess it's a whole is what you want to do. I mean, that some on the community council, obviously you were there, they are vehemently opposed, but at the same time,
But Matt,
Everyone
what is the
calls-
inconvenience?
you may have to wait a little bit longer.
Is it because
And the light?
there's a light there?
Mhm.
Make the right hand turn. on the
Yeah.
right.
But once again, I think some of that can be mitigated by
The amount
timing.
of time,
I mean,
I go to the high school, the amount of time that all that traffic is there is not a great
It's
deal.
15 or 20
It's
minutes.
15 minutes roughly.
Well, and
Yeah.
it's not only that, if you're taking your kid to the elementary school, you're going to the light and you're waiting for a light to turn left to go to Ridgecrest. So
Look, I've been persuaded. I didn't understand the dedicated right in the presentation to the SCC. I'm just thinking it's a goodwill gesture for us to go back and say, oh, this is really how it's going to work better.
Suzanne, are you okay moving forward and then having that conversation just as like, hey, let me update you on the technical
Yes,
aspect?
but
you get
you
to
are
60%.
the majority.
Or what do you
of me,
think?
So, it's, I
What's the
understand
next
the
milestone for
urgency.
sign? 60%?
About 60% design.
We can
I,
get back.
I will work with the Brighton SCC since it's in my district and that they came to me and
And I'm happy to
the
meet with
goodwill.
them.
Yeah.
I will go to
Yeah.
any meetings they wish me to go to. So,
it's really.
or actually I'll send Ben now.
Okay.
You're welcome, Ben.
Thank you for
I know
doing
he's
that.
listening.
Thank you for doing this. Thank you for helping us understand. We want to do what's best for our community and the feedback from those who use it, I think is
Okay, so if I may, Mayor, if I can tie a bow around
Yes.
this, just to give an expectation here. We're going to move forward with the, what they call the federal aid agreement signature with the state and the feds. That's going forward. That firm has already been chosen by the state. We've already gone through this process. We've gone through the procurement process for that. They'll sign the FAA with them. They are the same firm we're working with on the county portion, which you'll see. So once again, economies of scale, knowledge of the project. And then once that's done, once we start this again, we are going to update the cost estimations on where we are now based on what we are here. And we're gonna have to make some decisions, either up the budget or scale back a little bit of the project, keeping the elements in there, but what we can do, okay? And then we'll have those discussions.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but when we spoke, I think this county portion is a gift from the county, like we don't.
Yeah, we don't have any match on that. That
So
is,
maybe the
I-
match is our delay that we have to pay more because we delayed.
Yeah.
Because
And-
they have given us.
and that's the quarter, it came from the quarter of somebody's quarter of the quarter money. Everybody has a quarter.
Fifth quarter.
The fifth quarter, of the fifth
Fifth of our
quarter,
fifth.
right,
Fifth
so.
of last.
Yeah, well, add a fifth. That's where this money comes from. It is, a no.
Yeah.
No match fund.
Right.
And we will, by the way, we will stretch the county dollars as far as, I'd like to get it past that second intersection. And because that's important that we get those crossings shortened. And we'll review the second crossing there as well to see if we've had some input on that, but we'll review all of this once we get going. But I can't move forward until I have dollars to put into it.
Thank you.
I love the median. I
Thank
think
you.
that's really
Okay?
beneficial.
All right. Thank you, Mayor and Council. With that, we will move forward.
Okay,
And I'll let y'all decide tonight on the contract.
Thank you.
all right, now we will turn our time to the fireworks map discussion with our battalion chief, Riley Pilgrim.
Okay, so I can share this real fast. So what I want to start with tonight, first of all, thank you. What I would like to start with tonight is an overview of how we got to where we are, and then I'll show you the map itself. So I don't know if many remember, so roughly around 2020, 2021, there's a big push, especially by the fire service, to basically restrict everything east of 13th East. So around 2020, 2021, all the cities from basically Salt Lake City to Draper restricted all fireworks eastward of 13th East. Well, in the following years, 22, 23, a lot of cities felt like that was a little over restrictive, and they began to walk back on the restrictions. Cottonwood Heights was being one of those. Well, in that process, we had a pre-2020 map and then the post-2020 map, which we lost some of those restrictions. So over the last 2 or 3 years, been fine tuning and cleaning up our map based off of legislative requirements and abilities. And so what I want to start with is just reminding everybody to make sure we're all talking from the same place as far as what we're able to do, as far as what the legislation says, and then obviously as a council, you're able to do whatever you would like, right? But the state law is pretty clear on firework restrictions. And it kind of starts right here on 1.1. It's basically, we can restrict fireworks in the following areas, right? So mountainous, brush covered, forest covered, or dry grass areas, which we've done. Our map reflects that closely. Within 200 feet of waterways, trails, canyons, washes, ravines, or similar areas. And then the urban interface, not to be confused with the map we approved a few months ago. That's entirely separate. Any urban interface areas where there's wild or undeveloped area that commingles with structures. And so the uniqueness of Cottonwood Heights, where there's a lot of little draws, ravines that parallel people's backyards. This map is really challenging, and where there's no real straight roads, we've done our best to incorporate those areas that are within legislation or within statute. Well, it's 200 feet beyond those areas. And then the fourth one is the one I would like to kind of discuss tonight, is this 1.1.4, which is we can facilitate, we can go a little bit beyond the 200 feet or these restrictions above if it helps delineate a clear line so people aren't confused. And so the challenge we have is making sure people aren't confused because we're the streets wind and there's a lot of different little tiny coves and pockets. Sometimes we have to restrict beyond that to make sure there's a clear line so people don't get confused. That helps A, with the citizens, you're lighting fireworks so they know where they can do it, and B, when we actually try to enforce it, having very clear delineated areas, right? So that's what I base this off of. And so what we have tonight is the map, right, what I'm proposing for this year. I'll zoom in here in a second. The red is pre-existing, so anything that's red, we've had that in restrictions that have been approved previous to tonight's meeting. The purple are areas that when I worked with the new GIS specialist with Jacob, we meticulously went through every single area. I've driven all these. I have taken citizen feedback. I've taken feedback from this meeting in previous years. I've gone to every address that's come into me through an email or complaint, and I've looked at every single property. Some of those fall within a restricted area that we might have just missed. A lot of those will fall outside of it, and it tends to be just people who don't like fireworks and they have concerns, which are completely valid, but they fall outside of those parameters that we discussed previously. So tonight, what I would like to entertain or show is the purple areas or the pink. And then I've had shared with me a few other areas I would like to add to this as far as discussion goes. What I'd like to do is we'll kind of start down here. This is kind of the most prominent area where we made the most changes. This is probably, in my opinion, the most challenging area within Cottonwood Heights, because this is where you have a lot of these little hillsides, ravines, drainages, things that are adjacent to people's houses, and no straight lines. And so we've had to do our best to connect dots and make sure this is as accurate as possible. And the intent is also allow for people who want to do fireworks to do fireworks. That's been my understanding with what I've taken from these meetings. And so this is the first area, which is basically highly south of Bengal and Park Ridge and Mill Lane that goes through here. This area up here is new. This abuts or is adjacent to the drainage of Crestwood Park, right? And so this is great because it captures all these open spaces where it was red. No one's doing fireworks in here. That's not the problem. The problem is the homes next to the open space. So I had to make sure we added that. This is good because now we have a buffer between these open spaces that are very difficult to access. The challenge we have in an area like this is we create what I call like an island or a peninsula or a dog leg where these people can still light fireworks. There is a clear break we can make right here and just restrict all that. What becomes challenging is if police department gets a call in the middle of fireworks time, and it's somewhere in here, they got to figure out, was it in the new area, is it in this area? And it just creates a weird area where ideally we could use 1.1.4 and just cut this whole thing off, but then it becomes potentially over restrictive, right?
Chief, talking about this little portion down there.
So this is an example. This portion right here is along Mill Lane. There's some challenges in what happens if we unrestrict that. It's just this weird pocket of about 35 houses that can do fireworks, but nobody else around them can. And then the other challenge we have is Sandy has restricted everything along Creek Road. And just across the street, we have an office complex and then a hillside that is gonna be a problem that starts on fire. Now Sandy's restricted that, we haven't. So what I don't want to have happen is Sandy's not allowing people to do fireworks there, but we are. And we start a fire on Sandy City
Makes sense.
property.
Remind me with the state law, you can't restrict aerials.
So I think when we talked about this in the past, the tricky part is, and I do appreciate some of these improvements, this would include like you doing sparklers with your kids. Would not be legal in those areas, which I wish we had a little flexibility there, but I understand
it's everything. And we've met with the fireworks industry about 2 years ago. Fire service met with all the kind of key reps and their lobbyists from the fireworks side. They were frustrated with us for kind of arbitrary restrictions. They understand our intent to provide for public safety. And that was kind of one of their concerns too, is it does prohibit people from doing the basics. The challenge is we have no control over what people are doing. The restrictions are purely to prevent things. the stop lanes, right? The one that came up today was that was shared with me is this pocket right here, right along Bengal. So I restricted this stuff because my concern is this area down below. The challenge with this is it technically falls outside the 200 feet. And it's based more off of some personal experience with the fireworks. That again, what I want to be careful with is if we entertain one person's concerns, we probably need to be willing to entertain all of them. And another area that's come up in is over here and in here, where it's well within the open space, but people have complained about fireworks and safety concerns in these areas, similar to what happened here. The way to work around that with what I believe is in statute, it'd be Shane's opinion as well, as we could use Bengal as at 1.1.4, which gives a very clear delineated line that incorporates a little bit beyond the hazard area, but it makes a very clear line. And that's in the statute again. It does allow for exceptions where it's to facilitate a readily identifiable closed area. Right, so it's outside the limit, it's a limited area beyond the hazard area, but it allows us to have a very clear line, right? I think we're safe if we do that. And if we were to do that, my request or consideration would be we hit these areas and we're allowed to draw a straight line from here. From here, sorry, you can't see our point, that's not good. This area right here, my request would be we consider maybe drawing a straight line here. This makes police and law enforcement's job a lot easier. It's not necessary, but it would be a consideration to entertain. So these dog legs of area, any area where we have a dog leg, it's nice to cut those off. And same with this one over here. Again, it starts to beg the question, are we going too far? Is this overly restrictive? I think it's allowable within statute because it's drawing a clear line and incorporating a limited area outside the hazard area, but it makes law enforcement's job way easier. And in all honesty, it would reduce any additional threat to these areas. It just may be considered a little excessive. So that's what on the table tonight is A, the purple. That's what I propose. And then B, if we were to include some of these areas that came up today, we should probably consider including the others. That's my argument and kind of the proposal I have on the table. This map could be, with the information I take tonight, we can update it, and first thing tomorrow can be sent to Salt Lake County Emergency Management, and this will be on their website tomorrow morning. Whatever the council approves tonight will be the restrictions going in tomorrow, so.
As you take, I'm sure we each have questions and
Yeah.
comments, so whatever
Yeah.
order, I'm.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for this report and for the map. As I serve on UFA board, this is our Utah, we're red. We're extreme drought. So these recommendations are serious and will prevent a lot of problems. So yeah, I welcome people into.
The only thought that I
You
have,
more?
I will say just to
No, you're good.
support what you shared, Mayor, is that is something we consider. Granted, 6 weeks out. And we have the 24th, which is about 2 months out, right? So doing our best to make educated analysis of what's to come. Now, granted, a lot of these areas outside the red, in my personal and professional opinion, the drought doesn't really impact what we do there. Now, the concerns I have is obviously these open spaces between the houses. Obviously, it's gonna get warmer between now and then. Those will definitely become more prone and more, in my opinion, more high risk for fire. So that's definitely a factor I've equated into this as you consider this.
well, Chief, I was just gonna say, I trust your opinion on this. You're the professional on this issue. So as far as my area, I'm good with the purple. It's an increased restriction of what we've had in the past. I think it'd be an interesting thing for the council to think about in years to come. We're not gonna debate this year. I would almost be okay seeing some disincentivizing or even messaging from the city to say,
you know, if we were to bring our fireworks show back in future years, to say, please do not do them on your own. Please do not light them in the city. Please come and enjoy this show with your family where we've got a permit, an open field in the fire department there. I think when we talk about the drought and safety issue, Chief, I'm not the expert, so you tell me if I'm wrong. That may be an environment where it's probably the safest compared to people that are willy-nilly doing it themselves. And we might create an environment where we encourage people to not do fireworks out of their own choice and to come enjoy a show in future years if we choose to do so. So
Yeah, and that's been common messaging coming from the fire services. Take advantage of your municipal shows because those are permitted, they're coordinated. We have a lot of safety, we got a lot of mitigative and preventative measures in place when those happen. So we obviously prefer that people go do that, and it's safer for them.
Yeah.
You know,
It's just hard messaging. I know from my neighbors that enjoy the fireworks. It's a hard.
Fall off deaf ears to my neighbors.
Yeah,
I get it, I'm doing my own.
yeah, I get that.
yeah, that's why
Anyway.
these maps are
So
so.
is the purple gonna be permanent or is it?
it'd be the map moving forward unless you all want to change it, or I see something that we could change, but that would be permanent moving forward.
So that B as well, cutting off those dog legs would.
If we do that, yeah, and we can go back and change it next year if we want. It gets confusing when we constantly going back and forth. What I'd like to do, this one I think is pre-2020 where it used to be. With the few areas for consideration.
I know that we're gonna get calls, and in my opinion, I would like to tell them in all honesty that this is the advice of Unified Fire. This is for safety reasons, which would make, I would probably lean against, and Chief, maybe you have a different opinion, of your area was brought in for more convenience purposes. I'd probably not as inclined there. Safety is serious, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, if you're gonna talk about safety, you have to, first of all,
Yeah.
how do you tell the difference between the illegal and legal firework? You don't.
I have no idea.
It's gone by the time
Because
you
we
get
don't
there.
either, yet that's right. It used to be in the old days, if it left the ground or exploded, it was illegal.
Yeah.
It was very simple. Now it's very fuzzy because they go to Evanston and you can't tell a lot of the difference. And the distance that he's showing you between the purple and the red areas, that's not a big area. So when these rockets and different things in the area, they will travel. And the last big fires we had, believe it or not, they were fired from a place that it was legal to do it into a place that it was illegal. And that's where it caught the fire. So that said, to your argument about the safety, I would encourage you to be more progressive about the safety issue because for that reason.
That's what's
Understood.
hard about this is these are based off of legal fireworks in Utah. And we know how often that's followed.
So my comment on behalf of the District 4, can you pull back out a little bit? So that you show just that, you don't need to show the whole city, just from Bywater Park, if you can give us enough
Yes.
detail. So I will say the input that I've gotten over the last 4 years is 90% has been a concern for all the fireworks going on in Cottonwood Heights, even the fireworks show. And so I would like to say that to make it, to me, it's imperative that in the moment that somebody's life or death is happening because the fire department needs, and the police department need to have very clear, that's why, as you just said, was it 2010-ish that everything east of 1300 East
No,
was
2020. There's a really small window of time where there's a lot of effort to just restrict fireworks.
But you
And
said that from Salt Lake City to Draper, there was a time when 1300 East was the
Yes.
demarcation.
It was a 1 or 2 year campaign that had a lot of steam when it was initiated, but because of noise and complaints and overly burdensome restrictions, a lot of those got walked back.
I think the legislature jumped in at that point as well.
Sandy still abides by everything east of 1300 East. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
To their choosing, yeah.
So I'm weighing in that I want to absolutely do away with any of these dog legs, and I would be completely fine if everything, my district starts just east of 2700 East. It's about strangely it jigs and jogs.
It does.
But I would love to make it as clear as a day for the first responders that everything east of 2700 East And I would support that for this year, that everything east of that demarcating line was restricted.
That's
I would support that, and I hope that we'll rethink things and be responsive to what aridification is doing in our society and
And to your point, that is one of the lines I've drawn. To me, it's a little far west, in my opinion. The hard thing is to connect a dot in this area above Bywater Park is really challenging. And I can do it. Jacob and I can sit down and figure this out. Sagebrush Way is one of those.
well, that's.
My thought was 2,700 east to draw a straight line all the way through this, up this area, and it'd be.
Well, I heartily support that, and I will take the phone calls personally from anybody that lives in District 4 that doesn't like it, because safety has to come first.
that's the direction I needed. And again, we can decide tonight in the meeting what you decide, that's what I need to know, so I know where to draw that final line. I will say, when we had this fire, so it was right by Bywater Park in 2017. So it was the Mountain View Memorial Cemetery that caught on fire. Again, it was a firework that we believe was shot off well outside of the restricted area. The cemetery at the time was very unkempt, especially this open space. And it was in a very, 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 very unfortunate situation that happened since then. So almost 10 years now. The cemetery is more than committed to keeping that clean. And we have not had a problem. And the other thing I look at when we implement restrictions is historical challenges, right, or fires. And quite honestly, in Collinwood Heights, we have not had, other than a few small ones that are pretty common on the 4th of July, that are typically within a restricted area already. We actually have not had any fires start outside of our restrictions. The hard thing is they usually start where we're not even supposed to do fireworks anyway, and something happens. So I think the restrictions we have are working really well. I just want to make sure it's very clean and clear to those who live in that area what they are and where they are. So
As a practical matter, we have this map that you circulated. Is that the one we're going with, or are we going to modify that? And
That's
so
what I need to
how do we do that in a meeting? We don't have a map of any, we have the map that we received the other day.
Could it be
We're gonna
done in a
change that
motion?
way. If you can
They wanna
describe it, I
change it.
guess.
Yeah,
Well, I still haven't had an opportunity to speak if
yeah,
I could.
yes.
This partly came up because I was contacted by a resident on Sable Avenue, which is east of Brighton High School. So it's this little pocket right here, where she sustained some damage to her property from a neighboring property who was setting off aerial fireworks. So I thought we could just do that little bit, and I think what I hear you saying is that if we do that little bit, we need to be more consistent, and we would be taking all of pockets that fall under this 1.14.
Yeah,
And so my concern then is further down, close to where I live, but just further south. And if you could pull back, sorry,
very
figure
good.
that out. Let's come over and look. I know, Councilmember Holton, this would affect you too.
Yeah.
This is you. There's your area, this is
I can
my
zoom in,
area.
yeah.
And so the Rita Way, right here, really isn't a delineator. Because that's a whole neighborhood. And the creek goes right here, and I live right here, and there's actually a waterway right next to me. It's the ditch. So that hasn't included, because that's
Yeah, and
in the statute.
It's hard to go see every ditch and
By
every,
statute,
yeah.
that should be included.
and we could do that. That's why my proposal would be just Creek Road. And the right of way was to do the most unrestrictive, but draw a line, because before it was clear up here and it's kind of all between these houses. So what I did is we drew along Line Creek, along Pine Creek, up to Loretta, over to Highland.
So if I can add, Suzanne, as well, and this is why I want to make sure that we maintain some significant areas in these neighborhoods where people congregate, because if this is a safe area, Chief, was what you're saying, I'm okay if these people can't do fireworks, but they're all gonna coordinate to go to their friend's home and do sparklers, right? And other things. I have a really hard time if we said, you can't go to anyone's house, you know, you and the kiddos, to do some sparklers and really smart, safe things, and we have not had a history of fires in those areas from what you've said. So again, I think we're making expansions, which I am so good with. And if your professional opinion says these are unsafe, I'm okay with that. But you gotta think about these neighborhoods where these kids go to school and congregate and figure out ways where they can legally and safely do them, which is important to keep some areas open for safe firework behavior.
Yeah, it's a tough one, the clear line to Meets Creek Road.
Creek Road, so you would maintain this, which I would have some neighbors happy about. So the Creek Road would be the line we would draw, because it's a very clear.
Yeah.
And it's.
And I 100% agree with what you're saying, and my challenge has been like, how can I connect dots in these areas where there's really no straight road? They all
Women Creek.
do these things, yeah, and I have done my best, to Councilman Holmes' point, to try to keep those pockets open. But I do, if I lived there, it'd be super confusing, and I'm trying to just figure out, how come my neighbor over there can do it, but I can't right here?
For sure.
Well, that's
Yeah.
what would happen in my neighborhood, and so I could support
Yeah.
the Creek Road,
The
and then
Creek would
I
line
would
with Sandy's
definitely like,
on the south side,
well, and including Fable is really important.
and we could just do Bengal all the way down, and I guess the motion would have to be is including, I've asked to be very specific, but including there is discussed in the work session. My takeaway would be Bengal. I don't know direction wise, 1710 east right here. This, I don't know if we want to entertain that, leave it as is, see how it goes. And also next year we can do this again. To the statute and to what we need to protect, this accomplishes that. The cutting off the pocket would help. But that's the guidance that I
When
need.
you say Creek, Chief, are you talking east of Highland, or you're talking that whole thing?
Whereabouts
North of
again?
Creek, on everything north of Creek.
Yeah.
But I mean, even down in that area, down,
Right here.
yes.
I don't know how we do it otherwise.
Because I do want to acknowledge one thing. I think you're gonna have just a ton of non-compliance at some point.
Yeah,
And so,
that's,
That's the risk
Yeah,
someone
that's a
would
risk.
take, and if they,
Siesta is a nice, clear delineator. Just remember, I mean, you guys all know in this area, there's just so much, they're big lots with a lot of open space. And yeah, I honestly have not gotten a lot of negative feedback for or against restrictions in that area. Other than one person's lot, which we went and talked to, it's in this already. It's this area,
yeah.
right? And quite honestly, the feedback I get from citizens when it's passed on to me, I'll go visit every single house, and 9 out of 10 times it's well outside of a restriction. It's just somebody has had a negative experience with fireworks, doesn't like them, whatever it is, and I respect and totally validate their concern. It's just when it comes to law, we just try to follow that, and then use a little bit of discretion on these areas that are still would fall within statute, but yeah, there might be to some considered over the top or not enough, so that's where you all, your opinion, help me.
So
decide.
I think for me, I'm good with the improvements that have been made with the purple areas. If there is a little cutoff, there was one up north, I'd be okay if we maybe made a little change there for
Yeah.
convenience purposes. I would like to keep the rest of that area and watch these improvements and see, how things go and monitor. And to what you said earlier, when you said that these new areas would end up becoming the permanent map, that I'm taking that also into consideration, that I don't want to shut that out in perpetuity. So,
Yeah, one is a professional guiding your decision. I want these to be defensible decisions, right? And they all are, as we've talked about them. I think this area that Councilmember Highland brought up, completely defensible, right? These are really challenging pockets. And in my mind, I see this, I'm like, these are backyards. This isn't really open space. And so it does make that a little bit harder.
I mean, I would.
Same over here, these are backyards and not open space, so it does make it a little bit harder.
I would be, if it's easier, for you all, since it's around the school here and it's just such a little teeny pocket,
Yeah.
I'd be even okay to add that to the restriction area. If you.
And I could do that. That was on there originally. I pulled it off, but we could do that. And I could do east of Highland and leave the rest of that stuff above creek. It just might be, well, how come they got it and we didn't? And that's, conversations, discussions you might have to have. But I mean, we could easily put this in there. The concern I do have here, I mean, there's a hillside up here below Brighton High. Everything along Nantucket, this Cottonwood Cove, Florida, like all that is very complex, intertwined. And to me, like getting a fire truck in there right now is already difficult in a good day. And so I looked at all that stuff, everything below that, I felt like, okay, if something were to happen, we can handle that. And so those are all kind of factored in there, but we could put that area in there. We can do this one below Bengal. Since we're gonna probably add. So we could do this one that was brought up today below Bengal, and maybe we include this one right here. Because this is where we've had, again, some complaints. There's been complaints about Bywater in this little pocket. I can do my best just to clean those up, leave the rest as is. To see where it goes.
So what is your thought of everything south of Fort Union and east of 2700 East?
That's. Well,
I mean,
outside of the area, but
Councilmember Hartman, do you
47 gives us a really
see a
clear
problem
line.
with that, giving them the clear delineation of everything east of 2700 East and south of Fort Union Boulevard?
And you could do that, I'll take your direction. I feel like there's a lot of pockets in there that wouldn't need that, but to draw a clear line. I think we're right in the peripheries of the fringes of that one line in statute. But again, it's conversations that you may have with your constituents, but it's defensible because that gives a very clear line.
I
Or they
wouldn't be
can't,
that
yeah.
restrictive. I would be where you had originally said, there's this line there about
Sagebrush.
Bywater, sagebrush, for this year. That's a lot of homes in there, and if it's safe for them, to Councilmember Holton's point, to do the fun sparklers and. I mean, I don't like the aerial fireworks at all, but we can't control that. But taking away all the opportunity to celebrate seems a little excessive.
Chief Riley Pilgrim,
Yeah.
wasn't there a number of constituents who live to the west of Bywater Park that were very concerned about fireworks that were affecting them I thought we would see a lot more restriction to the west side of Bywater Park.
Just with the park being restricted, we could include some of that, but it doesn't really, those are irrigated, landscape, manicured. And so the reason the parks are, they're just public and we don't do fireworks in our public parks.
Yeah, I'm
So-
aligned with the sagebrush, and then in
Yeah.
my area include the Sable Avenues, we've already
Okay.
said, and because I know my neighborhood so well, that my neighbors on Loretta will go, well, how come we can't do fireworks, but the rest of the neighborhood can?
It's easy to do Highland down the creek.
Yeah,
And then that little pocket that you showed us where the school is, leave everything else.
And I think everything else down there, you've created a pretty substantial perimeter
Yeah.
from hills or parks that I think. You
Yeah.
keep it as you've done, as you've drawn it down.
So
and
maybe-
remember, there's a waterway there too, which makes it more
Yeah,
defensible for
yeah.
you and for me.
It's already
That little
defensible as
creek
is,
goes
yeah.
right along Farm Brook.
I think the defensible nature more so is when people are calling you if they're upset about it, you can
I'll hear it.
clearly articulate it,
Call
and
me.
you have the knowledge to do so. I don't think legally, I'm not an attorney, but I don't feel like we're gonna get a whole lot of pushback on that. I think it's gonna be more personal opinion than it is anyone standing their ground on the statute. And maybe the motion, those are pretty clear to me. We can do that. I think if the motion in this area, I don't know, Shane, how you feel? It's on sagebrush or the area adjacent to Bywater Park. I would be very minimal and I can connect the dots. The plan would be coming off of Fort Union using sagebrush right here. Cursor's hard to see. And then what I would have to do is connect the dot with like 7180. And the hard thing is I don't want to cut a neighborhood in half, so it's like trying to find just streets I can box that in with. And Jacob and I will sit down and do that, but that would take care of that area and. I'll tie that in.
So the issue is that we have an ordinance that adopts a map. And we're talking about changing the map on the fly. And so we either defer this until the next meeting, which I think it has some timing problems for us, or the motion has to precisely explain the changes that are being made to the map that is on the screen, and then direct Riley and team to create a new map that reflects the changes that would be described in.
So we would make that motion in today's business
Has
meeting.
has to be very precise.
Yeah, it needs to be very precise in the areas you're trying to add.
So I can write that up for whoever wants to do it and just give you that for the meeting.
So even though it's
That would be
not,
my direction tomorrow when we fix the map.
Yeah, you say basically you're moving to approve the ordinance, except that the map that's attached to the ordinance would be modified in these ways and would be then a new map would be substituted for the
if
one.
you hand me the verbiage, I would be happy to make that motion in tonight's business meeting.
Could we change, just draw on the map? That's
You can
printed
do
off
whatever you want, so
and
that
that with
yeah.
a marker
whatever
going
you
I have
back.
that one right there, what
Yeah.
we could do.
Well, I wonder if you need to do that on screen though, because it's a.
Can you hold it up?
That's,
I can try.
You can do that one.
I can do that too.
but I would describe as well as draw and show it on the screen.
What I can do is,
And,
as I show this in the meeting, I can go to the exact locations that the motion would include. Show that since I don't know if I'll be able to do it.
If you've got, if you've got time on the PDF just before the meeting
I'll
to
try to do that.
highlight it, say with these added areas.
Yeah,
I would still try to describe it in language as best you can.
okay.
I verified in the UFA meeting this morning that this is fine. This is the council's job and we can make modifications with our battalion chief.
Don't feel like you have, the statutes there to guide us, and these there to follow, but it's also, this one gives us some guidance. And that's what's been kind of challenging but helpful, and so as long as it's addressed the concerns in this room. I think that's what's most important, so.
Good. Well, thank you. This has been a very thorough discussion and very important. And I appreciate the new lines that have been drawn for safety and all the work that you and our GIS staff have done together. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for all of our council members' discussion and comments. And now we'll move on to our budget discussion with Finance Director Scott Jervis.
All right.
Just
So I'm gonna share the document that you all have in front of you right there. At least you will have in front of you. So this is an analysis that I put in related to fund balance. So one of the things with our fund balance, excuse me. And this goes back to 2018, 2019, when we did our last tax increase. At that time, so really quick, the numbers on the left that are dollars relate to the stacked bars that are going up here. The blue stack bar is our beginning fund balance. The orangish colored stack bar is our ending fund balance from a given year. So you can tell if, like in this year, that would be an increase in fund balance throughout that year. And then in this year, this would be a decrease in fund balance in that given year. And then the gray bar, this is our 6% minimum fund balance plus our compensated absence reserve. And I'd never done that as a percentage before today, and it turned out that it's very stable. It stays almost exactly 9% in every year. It's some years it will flutter down to 8%, but it stayed very, very consistent throughout that. So I was actually kind of happy to see that from a percentage basis, that stayed consistent. But that's the dollar amount that's with it. And then on the lines that are on there, which is the red and the green line, they're calibrated on the percentage that's on the right side of that graph. And that's the percentage of either, in the green case of our green line, our fund balance, or in the case of the red line, that represents the percentage of our compensated absence, which like I said, is very close to 8%. And then the dollars of it is of that red line is represented by the gray bar. So why I wanted to bring this up is back in 2018-19, we were at 19% of our fund balance compared to our revenues. And so when you take our whatever our fund balance is, which at the time was about $3.7 million, and our budgeted revenues, which were just under $20 million, 19,758,000. Our calculated fund balance back in 2018-19 was at 19%. So roughly 20%. And that comes from this right here, if you were to draw a line across. And we stayed near there, and then we started to see a combination of extreme sales tax growth over 2 years, plus one-time funds coming in from either CARES or state and local fiscal recovery funds. And between all those, that swelled our fund balance up. And in addition, we were kind of trying to put a brake on expenditures that we could during that time. So our fund balance swelled up, and then as a percentage anyhow, and then started to decline back down. And so in our 2023-4 budget year was the first year that we saw a relatively significant decline. And that decline was about $1.8 million here. So this was kind of the plateau of our fund balance. So we saw a $1.8 million decline here. And then in 24-25, we saw about a $1.7 million decline here. And then moving forward to the year that we're in, we're probably going to be around a $1.9 million decline. That could vary a little bit because that's a projection. Maybe it's 1.7, maybe it's 1.8, right? But somewhere in that realm is where I would probably expect to see a decline in our fund balance. So that's what's precipitated us being in this position. But you can see, even though our fund balance projected at the end of our fiscal year that we're in June, in a couple months, versus what we had in 2018-19 from a dollars perspective is almost even at right around $4 million. But from a percentage standpoint, we've dropped from 19% that we will be in the realm of about 14% at this point in time as we go forward. And then if we move into the next budget year, because as our revenues increase, if we were to maintain 4 million, our actual fund balance will decrease a little bit because of the percentage relationship on that. But we are going to have a slight build the fund balance as it is represented in the current tentative budget, because there's about $220,000 or so of fund balance increase over the course of the budget as it stands. So we have a very, very slight increase, bringing us to about 13-14% by the end of that fiscal year. But I bring this up because from a percentage basis, we're in worse financial shape now than we were in 2018-19 when the last tax increase was put in place, just looking at it from a fund balance on hand perspective. When you look at it as dollars on hand, we're in about the same position as we were in 2018-19. Just the difference is our base revenues at that point in time was about $20 million, where our base revenues at this time with the $3.5 million tax increase would be about $32.3 million. So when you look at that dynamic and everything, it depends how you look at it as to whether you're saying we're increasing our fund balance or decreasing. If you're looking at it from a percentage basis, going from 19% to 14%, that's a decrease in a fund balance. But from a dollar perspective, it's about even, or maybe even just a slight increase over what we had back in 2018-19. So it depends how you look at it.
And they both are significant and have their own, merits in terms of how you look at the fund balance. So I thought this was kind of a good way to kind of visualize what goes on. Technically, our minimum fund balance is 6%. We can go down to there. We aren't anticipating that we will pay out 100% of our compensated absence reserve in any given year. That's very unlikely. You only do that if you're shutting down. And so that's not going to happen. So keeping around 9%, even though that's a reserve on our fund balance, it's not necessarily that's where we're going to get to. However, what you do get into, and as I've said in the past meeting, because of the cash flow aspects, in the course of our year, most of our property tax comes in November, December, and January. And then our sales taxes come in on about a 1 month and 20-day delay from when the month closes that we're receiving. So when, July's sales taxes, we don't receive until September 20th, about 21st area. And so because of some of those, it's good to have some fund balance. In addition, if we had some unexpected, say, capital maintenance needs or something along those lines that was significant, if it's small dollars, it's not such a big deal, but if it's a significant need, it's good to have some fund balance in order to be able to address issues as they come up, as you're going forward. And the more that you have in a percentage basis is better, with 35% being the top of the range. And my comfort level would be probably from 15 to 25%. With saying that we could go above that if we say we're saving for a certain thing that we had in mind, or there's unexpectedness. So a lot of the reasons why we got so high, back when we did in 21, 22 through 23, 24 was due to one-time funds coming in, and trying to get our heads wrapped around how to utilize, those funds, and stuff like that. So anyhow, are there any questions on this slide as it sits right here?
That's very helpful for me.
So it's a percentage of general revenues or general expenditures?
Revenues. Yep. And not transfers in, which are an other source.
It excludes those.
Yeah. Or if we sell assets, that would be an other source, not a true revenue. So there's a kind of like a little subtotal line in there, but it generally includes, some years it's literally 100% of revenues, and other years it's about maybe 99, 98% of revenues.
But what I'm differentiating is we do receive general revenues that are transferred out.
Yes, we do. About $6 million of general revenues are transferred out for either debt service reasons or capital projects reasons. That's the main functionality that we utilize those revenues for. About $2.5 million out for, well, maybe it's a little, about 2 million. I have to look because I can't remember, but it's about 4 million that's for debt service and about 2 million that's for capital. I'd have to look to get closer than that right now. So. Any other questions on this particular one?
No.
Okay. And then I'm gonna switch from this to that document. Will you pass that one around and I'll give you this one. So we'll have it shortly. So what I did is, I know that there's been significant citing of holidays, budget policies that they have included. And then we also had budget policies in our budget document year over year. And I basically took both of those sources of budget policies, kind of intermingled them into an outline format, added some descriptors, and then even some suggestions in there of potential, balances, like I said before, like between 15 and 25% might be a target area to try and have, you know, for your budget. And this is about 7 pages worth of stuff. There's a lot in here. And we will try and boil this down so that we can probably get it into a single sheet for a summary that we can include in as the budget. But wanted to have some more details if we needed to explain what was in some of the shorter bullet points that, you know, we will have in the final document. But starting with fund balance, because fund balance is so critical to what you're doing, that I think starting at fund balance is a good place to start. And we have our general fund, which is our main fund balance that fluctuates so much, and that we rely on quite literally to be able to make all the other funds work. So having the general fund be kind of the center point of that. There are categories of fund balance, like there's non-spendable. We typically don't have that. Restricted, and that would be restricted due to maybe a legal agreement or other, you know, agreements that we have in place. Committed, and a committed a fund balance portion would be like the compensated absence. We've committed those funds for that purpose. And then we have assigned and unassigned, and you know, those could be assigned for various reasons, and stuff, but that's totally at the discretion of the city, you know, whether it's the city council or others. And that in order to do that, we don't have a lot of that. And then unassigned fund balance is the fund balance that's truly available to be appropriated at any given time as we go forward. So some of the things in here are driven by Utah code, and I've generally tried to get that in here, but others are driven by Cottonwood Heights Municipal Code. That would be like the 6%. And so one of the things I'd like to do is reference those in here as much as I can. So I still need to go through and do some of that referencing. And then putting things like on B3I, you know, where, you know, well, really B2I, if our goal is to keep fund balance between 15 and 20%, because we will have some fluctuation year over year, then you know, that becomes our goal, our target area, and then anything outside of it becomes cautionary, where we're trying to say, bring it back in those areas. And then if we're going to go either above 25% or below 25%, we would want to do that with your advice and consent, basically, to be able to show either why we're holding more money than 25%, maybe it's for a capital project, or why we're going below 15%, which maybe it's for some type of unforeseen, you know, shortage or whatever that we had in terms of that. But then one of the things in here, and this mimics holidays, is once, you know, reserves are used, go away a little thing. No, go away. We should replenish them in a timely manner. So if we're going to go below 15%, we should have a plan of either how are we going to either reduce expenditures or increase revenues. And it could be through a property tax increase like we're contemplating this year. It could be through fee changes. It could be through a myriad of different things that you could consider doing. It's just a way to be able to formulate how you're going to ameliorate whatever it is that you're facing. And if you're going above, it might be, okay, we know we've got this capital project that we're planning, but it's 2 years out, we're starting to save for that. You know what I mean? Or whatever it happens to be that you're doing, or we didn't realize we were going to have savings on a certain thing and it ballooned us up there for some reason. In our other funds, you don't usually have to have a lot of fund balance in your capital projects fund or in some of your other funds. However, one of the things that we ran into this year and we've talked about a lot is when you have these capital projects that you've applied for grants on, but they're out 3, 4, maybe even 5 years out there, maybe what we ought to be doing is if we apply for a grant that has a $200,000 match and we know it's not going to be awarded for 2, 3, 4 years, maybe we take that 200,000, park it in our capital projects fund, so it's sitting there waiting for when that grant comes available. then we don't have to appropriate additional funds from our general fund into that capital projects fund for that, because we've already kind of pre-funded that with a transfer from whenever it is that we made that commitment that we were gonna do that particular grant, from our perspective. Now the award, like I said, might be out a couple of years, but at least we kind of, in essence, pre-funded something along that and parked the money there. Now, when you get closer, if you made the election that, hey, we're not gonna do that, we can then pull maybe $100,000 or $200,000 back, for a project that you initially thought you were gonna do or something along those lines. So it's not like those dollars are lost. It's just, you don't have to go back to your general fund and say, hey, we're now looking for, like the perfect storm that we ran into where we were looking for, just under $1 million or whatever it was we were looking at about 6 months ago, where we might be able to go ahead and move forward on that without negatively affecting the general fund.
I think this speaks to why it was requested that we have a 5-year budget, because then you're
Yes.
gonna see these bumps and lumps and anticipate them, because my concern would be that those get lost from council to council. I don't, if I weren't on the council previously, I wouldn't know that 200,000 was there, and so I'm a little bit concerned about just parking money for 3 or 4 years. But if you have it in a 5-year plan and you know it's coming, then you'll be able to account for that in the budget, every budget cycle.
Yeah, and what we could do is, like I said up above here, in your fund balances, you have, your different categories. If we had money, we could assign money within the capital projects fund, and park it down there. Say if it was a $200,000 match, we could put $200,000 in, and then as part of our fund balance that we're carrying, we could disclose that this is a match for the ABC grant that we anticipate in, 2028 or whatever it happens to be. So that we can know we've already parked that money out there. It's clear to staff, it's clear to council and others as we go through that process. That's just one of the ways we could potentially do it. Another would be to retain it in, the general fund would be another way. The general fund has a lot of stuff in it, and so I would worry a little bit more about it being there where we have regular operational stuff, but it doesn't preclude you from getting closer and going, oh dang, things aren't going well, we need to pull that money back into the general fund.
Okay, if that's the case, I see your point. But over 3 or 4 years, in that case, you would also have probably sales tax revenues that would cover that. And that's why I'm expressing the concern that you should use those operational dollars for operations. If you anticipate having the revenue to cover that in 3 or 4 years. But this is the first time seeing it, so I just would have to kind of think it through a little bit.
Because there's a myriad of ways this could be set up, you know what I mean? And any transfers of funds would come before you as a council and be either budgeted for at the beginning of the year and it be in there as an adjustment, or we would propose it possibly for the next year if it was for a project that was further out.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So there's a lot of different ways we could do it. But capital projects fund doesn't necessarily require a lot of, monies in there. Sometimes there's a few dollars that we have to keep in there, maybe for some legal reason, but there's not usually a requirement there. In our stormwater fund, we typically want to have about $500,000 in there. And we've talked about that in the past, and that's in case we have an emergency repair that we have to do. Usually 500,000 will get us by, so that we don't have to worry about dipping into funds. And then in the next year, we'll just scale down capital projects to be able to build that fund balance back to that $500,000 amount. So going forward, hopefully we're okay on that one. That typically has worked for us.
Why a dollar amount instead of a percentage, so that it could fluctuate with some prices?
We could consider that, but there's not a revenue, there is, I guess, a dedicated revenue source. It's just under 2 million right now. So we could say 25%, if we wanted to express it that way. And then, in another 10 years, it would hopefully be, somewhat consistent, but we could definitely look at doing that.
Consider that.
Yeah. And then, in the debt service fund, typically we don't have a lot. However, we do need to cover amounts that we have on deposit. Like I said, in the last meeting, oftentimes due to how bonds are set up, we have to to prepay the paying agent about 6 months before the bond payment is coming. That still is cash to us as a city. We just can't utilize that going forward. So we put it in deposit in and designate that in the debt service fund in advance. And there's, I can't remember the amount in there, $400,000 or $500,000 that sits in there for that purpose. Now that'll benefit us at the very end of that debt service period, but those dates are far enough off on all those that it's not, something that's, going to benefit us immediately. So anyhow, and then on the CDRA fund, there is some fund balance in there, and I would recommend keeping some for various redevelopment reasons. And then if we have any development, like tax increment financing type things, there might be a handful of dollars that need to be held in there for different things to service different things on that. But it just depends on what it is and what we have to do. And until you have an agreement in place, you just don't know all the ins and outs of what you're going to have on that. Revenue, one of the things that it emphasizes is that one-time revenues should go towards either ongoing expenditures or possibly to utilize as a one-time recoup of fund balance, depending on what the source of that revenue allows you to do. A lot of times one-time revenues, you need to use them for certain things. The exception to that was the state and local fiscal recovery funds and the CARES Act stuff that we got. We didn't really have to use that specific for certain things. We were able to claim revenue replacement on that, and it didn't really need to be having a matching expense with it. But typically they do have that kind of thing. But a lot of times on revenues, we need to look at those and match them up to one-time expenses so that if and when that revenue ever disappears or isn't renewed, I have it clearly identified which expenses go with it so that we can correspondingly go down and eliminate the expenses or have the discussion to say, is this something that we want to continue to do from an expense perspective? Because now it's going to have an effect on the overall budget and what do we want to do, with that. A lot of times, like in the old days, we had COPS grants, and a lot of times those were seed grants where they would give us money at the very first of a police officer's, addition. And then in future years, it was expected that the city would step up and pay for those things. We don't see those very much anymore, or if you do, it doesn't make sense unless you're a growing community. But there used to be a lot of money for that kind of stuff floating around. But being conservative, when we forecast revenues, we usually have been pretty good at doing that. And keeping in mind, different things related to that. And then measurement, and I think we've been pretty good in terms of being, able to measure. For instance, we did not budget $400,000 worth of revenue in our current year's budget initially because we weren't 100% sure the source of that and the amount of that. We waited a few months and then we did a budget adjustment later in the year where we added that 400,000 to our budget once it became clear to us what that amount was going to be. So I think we're in compliance with much of this. On the expenditure side, don't make sure that our expenses are not going beyond what we can pay with our current revenues. Trying to, look at ways that we can, ameliorate things. Of course, continually trying to be as effective as we can with our expenditures. And if we can be more efficient, obviously, to do different things as we go through a lot of this, as we go to day to day. On the compensation, a lot of this brought in items that were in the holiday policies, and this 5%. So if the city's salary range is more than 5% below the market for any given position, then the grade would be adjusted for that position. That came directly out of the holiday plan there. And then, the city pay plan should be reviewed and adopted, with the budget and stuff and everything. And along with that.
We kind of skipped over B, which is
Sorry, which B?
interesting, which just says that before we consider permanent staff, we're gonna contract. essentially.
And this came from, again, holidays. And so if we want to look at different things and wording it different ways, we can definitely look to changing different things. Probably initially, looking at outsourcing things, but especially if it's something new that we do, it can be a good thing to do as we're testing the waters to say, is this something that we want to do? If it's something that we're already doing within a city, but we're looking to expand it, oftentimes just adding, to what we're already doing makes sense on that. So, but I think this is just consider this not necessarily thou shalt, and so I think it gives us a little bit of, that, but I think having at least an analysis of this versus that, doing it in-house versus doing it in some type of an outsourced fashion before we just pull the trigger and make a arbitrary decision, without really doing that analysis. So that it's good.
I think in the interest of time, since we're about halfway through this,
Yeah.
we'll send this out electronically and have you kind of review. We just wanted to make sure we weren't missing anything. And then our other plan is to take this, simplify it a little bit into a one sheeter that you can look at during a budget process. So you can make sure we're following policies with more detail in these policies that are adopted.
Well, I might be wrong on this, but I thought this was part of what our standing budget committee would do is review policies. Are we wanting to implement these sooner?
I think it's good for the public to see that we are implementing them now.
So
Several of
this
these
would
already
be part of
exist.
this would be part of the budget this year, and then it would be subject to at least
Yes.
review and input from the budget standing committee.
Yeah, several of these already exist in our current.
Yes,
Yeah.
I recognize. that.
So, I mean, there's some added ones in here from the discussions that we've had,
Okay.
and yeah, I mean, that would be part of the review of the standing budget committee to go
Okay.
through and see if there's things we want to amend or they want to recommend that we.
Yeah, I
I
really
support that,
appreciate
but I would
it.
like more time to go over it
Yeah.
and just.
For sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we'll send these out electronically and give us comments back, and then we'll bring you some amended ones back and just go through and make sure we're not missing anything, or if you think we're overbearing in other areas, please let us know.
No, I know it's a big ask, but was really helpful for me to go and look at the surrounding cities' budgeting and see the differences and how they were approaching things. And I just think that makes us better in what we do when we look at best practices and what's working for other cities around us. I'll commit to doing
For
that.
all of this.
Yeah.
This is
Very comprehensive.
we will go study.
And there are interrelations, like you'll see things in the revenues that are in expenditures, right? Because there's a
Yes.
correlation between them and in the fund balance area, because again, there's correlations between all that stuff.
We also recognize there's a lot of wordsmithing that needs to happen here,
Yeah.
so this is a
I
very
agree.
quick draft outline that Scott threw
You know,
together.
it's presented, I think there's some,
So-
just, yeah, if you're
This is
open,
by-
but that'd be awesome.
By far not a final draft.
Yeah,
So,
I
it's-
appreciate
Thank you.
that. I didn't
Yeah.
expect to see something this quickly, so thank you very much to everyone that was involved in producing that. Yeah.
Good. All right. Now, the final item is the budget officer will present and make available to the public a property tax impact schedule as a separate document from other budget documents.
It's here.
Yes, and we have it. So if anybody, attending or what have you would like to see it, it's here. It's also available on our website.
Website.
And so we've put it out there. There's multiple ways to get to it from our website. So we're literally trying to flood the world with this stuff. But this outlines the tax increase and the impacts of what is proposed to be funded with the tax increase. And this was discussed in detail in our last city council meeting.
And just for clarification, this has to be on every time we talk about the budget.
I'm sorry, what has to be?
This has
This
this item.
item. It's a non-action item. It just needs to be on for notification. So every time we talk about the budget, which means probably every meeting.
Put it on my bill. Thank you very
So
much.
what I would really like to call attention to for people who are listening online is that if you go to the website, there's some really good documents, especially the staff memo that was shared last meeting that outlines exactly what's happening with our budget as well as a narrative and this document. I think it's very helpful. It makes it so you don't have to do quite so much wading through. It's organized very well. So thank you, Scott, for those.
Yeah, and I'll show people really quick.
Thank you.
So we have, first there's the statement, which is here. And that, there's a link to all this stuff in our,
On the budget
on the
website
that
or
website.
webpage.
This is the document that we're talking about now that details out what totals up to 3.5 million for the property tax increase. Sorry, I've got this thing. I gotta get rid of it. There we go. And then this is the budget document that you were just referring to, where it gives a lot of detail in terms of where we came from, how we got to the 3.5 million, and then goes through all the different scenarios of, breaking it down into the individual department and divisions, and then eventually gives you all the details as far as, budget schedules and other things along those lines. So it's all out there online. So please, if, go look at it there. If you have questions, whether it's, staff, council, or public, please reach out to me and I can talk to you and, bring you up to speed on whatever.
Thank you. All right, we'll end this meeting with our review of calendars and upcoming events. Tomorrow, on Wednesday, May 20th, from 1:30 to 2:30, we have our senior social bingo in the community room at City Hall. We have our Public Works open house for residents also tomorrow, Wednesday, May 20th, from 5 to 7 p.m. at Public Works Building. It was fun to be there today with the students. It was really well done. And we have District 4 Town Hall meeting Wednesday, also May 20th, from 6 to 7 p.m. in the council chambers at City Hall. Memorial Day is Monday, May 25th, 2026, and City Hall is closed, and I will be speaking at the mortuary. Then we have the Summerhill Park ribbon cutting on Tuesday, May 26th, 2026 at noon. And then we have the Shred event Monday, June 1st, 2026, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. at Hillside Plaza, open to Cottonwood Heights residents only with 2 boxes per vehicle limit. Then we have the Charm Hard to Recycle event Saturday, June 6th, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Hillside Plaza.
And
Yes.
Mayor, if I may make a point of privilege, there was a little miscommunication that has occurred. And I want to recognize Robbie Overson. He has been behind getting a charm event to Cottonwood Heights in recent years. I've had the good fortune of being there present for 2 out of the last 2 or 3 that have occurred in Cottonwood Heights. And he has emphasized that our real opportunity is if council members really embrace the opportunity for this unique event, which brings the possibility of all the many things that you cannot recycle with Wasatch, with Whitford, can be brought, most all of them, to this charm event. But the big difference between charm events that are happening in some of the surrounding cities and ours is that the more that council members are present, including the mayor, that Robbie has found that the amount that's collected, it was 18,000 pounds in Holiday recently, contrasting to the 5,000 pounds of hard to recycle materials in Cottonwood Heights last year. So I would underscore that we all have an enthusiasm for less things going to the landfill or inappropriately being not being recycled. So I'm just making the plug. Robbie, thank you for being here, and I'm so sorry for this misunderstanding. I thought he was going to be in the work session today, but he didn't. So he has listened to our entire work session, thinking he was going to be brought up to the table.
So it was all good.
Well, so again, thanks for all you're doing, and I'm sure we'll all try to get that in our calendar.
I know I'm hoping for some miracles at my house with some computers. Butlerville Days is July 16th to July 18th, 2026. And we're excited for that. And then the Monster Mash Trunk or Treat, October 22nd at Hillside Plaza. And that ends anything I see on our agenda. So I would take a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second that motion.
So our meeting is adjourned. All in favor?
Aye.